What's up, guys? We're back with another video today. This one's going to be a little different than some of the other ones. Today we're going to be talking about some debates among how tortoises are organized in groups of relatedness, and then we're going to try to answer a question about some tortoise hybrids. So just while we're getting into this, you want to make sure you subscribe to this channel. We're going to be posting a lot more topics like this, where we're linking science and reptiles, two fields that unfortunately don't seem to cross over a lot. Alright, so the whole topic for this idea actually came from one of the Kamp videos where he tried to answer the question of,
can a Galapagos tortoise breed with an Aldabra?
And he didn't really seem to do much with that. He called one of his friends, who's actually a breeder of different tortoises and different animals like that,
Could actually produce a hybrid baby or produce babies. Now, I went on and talked about how there's sulcatas and leopards have done it, and leopards and redfoots have done it. So I can't answer.
and he kind of concluded on an unsure note.
To be honest, my male tortoises will jump on a rock and start thinking it's a female.
So that's what started it, and I ended up keep pushing it off and trying to get my thoughts together on it until the other day there was a video posted by Kevin McCurley of that room with all those different tortoises in it. And in that first part, we see what seems like a male Russian tortoise breeding. Maybe looks like it could be a marginated tortoise. And then in the second part, it looks like it could be maybe a young sulcata breeding something that's just different tortoises of different species trying to breed. So the main question trying to answer here is, which tortoises are able to hybridize together? And in looking into this, we actually opened a lot of doors to some interesting information, because the answer to the question we're trying to really answer is how similarly genetically are these animals to one another, because obviously the more similarly related they are, they'll be able to breed. So to get started, we're just going to go over and define a few things, just so we're all working with the same basis of information. So again, the question we're really trying to answer with this, by determining hybridization, is how genetically related these animals are to one another. So to do that, we use what's called a phylogenetic tree. So it kind of looks like a tree. It has some starting point, and it then has different branches that break off at different points. We've all seen something like this before, or some version of it. They're typically depicted horizontally, with the length of the lines representing time. And every time we see the branch split in these nodes, that would be an act of speciation. So we have one animal speciating into three different animals in this example. So as we branch, that point of speciation before that represents the common ancestor of all of these. So for example, let's say this is our tree. This is species A. It branches into two species. Call them B and C. So this is A, all the way up to this point where it becomes B and C. And let's say B then splits into D and D, and C does not. C does not split. So here we're saying that B is the common ancestor of D and E. And likewise, we can say that D is more closely related to E than it is to C, because this is still C. But what we can say is D, E, and C all share the common ancestor, A. As we start with these broader groups and go down to more specific groups, we're going through the levels of classification, which, if you're not familiar with,
we have kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, species.
Obviously becoming more and more specific as we get lower. So again, an important thing to know with those trees is that they're correctly built based on genetic information, where the more closely genetically related animals are obviously sharing a more recent common ancestor than with something that is further genetically distant. So obviously this genetic testing hasn't been around forever. And when some of these phylogenetic trees were originally being constructed without that genetic DNA, they were built more so on things based on geographic location and maybe some physical attributes. And we know that's not correct. One of the classic examples of that is when you compare the skeleton to that of the Nile hippopotamus to the pig. You see similar skeletal structures and even similar dentition. However, through genetic testing, we know that the hippopotamus is much more related to the whale than to the pig. So one of the original groups that was proposed as a genus was the genus Geocolone. And this group was pretty much built on tortoises that were on that medium to larger size and didn't really have any special attributes to their shell. So like not like the hingeback tortoises or anything like that. These animals came from areas such as Africa, South America, and Asia. And just to run through them really quick, we're going to use the common names. You'll understand why in a second. But it's the yellowfoot tortoise, the Chaco tortoise, the sulcata tortoise, Burmese star tortoise, leopard tortoise, all of the Galapagos tortoises, the redfoot tortoise, the Indian star tortoise, the Aldabra tortoise, the radiated tortoise, and the plowshare tortoise. So when you're writing the binomial scientific name, that first part of it is actually the genus. So the first half of the Latin name for all of these animals was actually the same. So then a few years down the road, these animals were tested genetically to build a genetically correct tree. And one thing that this original tree failed to do was account for extinct species that were related to these other animals. So when the genetic tree was built, the correct tree, the genus became very scattered through different lineages. So rather than to rename and reclassify some of the genuses as they should have, the tree was rebuilt again based on skull structures, different bones and shape of the skull. Again, bringing up that error in constructing a tree where we're using the physical appearance of an animal to talk about how it will be related to another. So basically when we drew out those different levels of classification, they don't really come with any meaning other than that they represent broader or more specific groups. So again, like we said, they start out very broad and become very specific. So the problem that happened was the original classification had the genus Geocolone started here and branching into, all these different animals. What happened was, upon the genetic mapping, it would start here, it would branch. However, other animals became more genetically related to others. So this is where the genus starts. All of the descendants from that need to be in the same genus. What happened was, though, you had, some of them were in it, but some were not. And then that genus was also appearing in other lineages that did not have the same genus. So this is actually an error in creating a phylogenetic tree. It's known as being polyphyletic. You're taking from different lineages, but not correctly. So this is basically saying that this lineage evolved this way, but animals from another lineage also evolved into this one.